You became the paparazzi darling. How did that shape you? What was the pressure like?
A sheriff's department spokesperson tells ET they received a disturbance call yesterday at 7:15 a.m. for a female that was yelling.
Oh my God! Oh my mother! I always knew it! Oh, you f***ing witch! I knew it! What a witch!
Did it ever occur to you that that fame could be used as a tool against you?
Mischa Barton rose to fame in 2003 when she played Marissa Cooper on the hit show The O.C. At the tender age of 17, Mischa would be thrust into fame and become an overnight sensation. Dubbed Hollywood's girl next door, Mischa was put on a pedestal and idolized by many. But with that adoration and attention came a dark side. After years of being held in the press would turn on Mischa and rip her to shreds. She would go from being the it girl in Hollywood to being spat out and discarded in the blink of an eye. In recent years, Mischa has spoken out about the dark side of Hollywood and what it was like growing up in the public eye. This is the story of Mischa Barton. Quote, I will start by saying that I am lucky to have had career success at such a young age. I am thankful for the kindness and opportunities that were offered to me. But ultimately, while I am grateful for some of these, they have come at a cost. This year of quarantine has brought a fresh perspective and prompted me to reflect upon the trauma I have been so scared to speak about for so many years. Why? For fear of rejection, backlash, and victim blaming that so many others before me have suffered. But I'm tired of keeping quiet and letting others write my story. Sadly, we live in a post-fact society, and my life has often been reduced to a clickbait soundbite. In 2021, Mischa Barton wrote this statement in an article for Harper's Bazaar, where she detailed the ups and downs of her career and how the entertainment industry almost broke her. Mischa Barton was born on January 24, 1986, in Hammersmith, London, to parents Paul and Nuala. She was the middle child of 3 daughters. When Mischa was 5 years old, the family relocated to New York City, where she enrolled in a summer camp. Growing up, Mischa was a very shy child and didn't have many friends. The Guardian writes, Barton says she was an introverted child who loved literature and poetry competitions. While the other kids were running around outside, she was indoors writing monologues. It was at this camp where Mischa says that someone saw her and suggested she take up acting. This person's mother just so happened to be an agent. Upon taking their advice, Mischa enrolled in acting classes and soon found herself enamored by the art.
I went to summer camp here in New York in the city, and this mom of another kid came up to my mom and was like, oh, she has to, you have to get her into acting. She's got great stage presence, which I think it is completely untrue at the time in retrospect, because what she was referring to was this terrible little depressing monologue I wrote when I was like 9 years old, 8 years old, off at summer camp. And it was, it was kind of dark material, really. I was like, everybody else was running around like riding horses, and I was holed up inside like writing these monologues with the art kids, which, it was one of those camps where you can really kind of like pick your little clique. And she was sold that I had a career ahead of me, and I guess she wasn't wrong.
In 1994, at the tender age of 8, Mischa would go on to star in the off-Broadway play Slavs, where she received praise for her riveting performance. From there, she appeared in several other plays, as well as television shows where she was able to nurture her craft and stage presence. In 1997, Mischa would make her film debut in the movie Lawn Dogs. Though the film won several awards, it would also leave a huge imprint in Mischa's life, and not in a good way. Quote, the truth is that sexuality has always been a component of my career. Even from a young age, I was sexualized. Don't get me wrong, I loved being an actress and my work on stage. I felt very grown up, proud of my work, and really committed myself to it. But I was still just a child. My movie debut, Lawn Dogs, explored themes of child SA. And while the crew did everything to ensure that I wasn't exposed to the realities of what all that meant, when I did press for the film, it became clear that it was very mature content.
You ever wonder what one of these might feel like? Going in You smell like your mom.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to be able to see it because it's got a 15 rating, and, well, I would love to be able to see it on the big screen, but I suppose I'm not going to get the chance to, but it's okay because I've been able to see it on private screening, so I've already seen the film, and eventually I'll be able to see it on the big screen.
So what are you going to do tonight instead?
In 1999, Mischa would star in another movie called Pups with Burt Reynolds, where she was again sexualized. In her Harper's Bazaar article, she wrote, "Lead roles in coming-of-age films are always directly tied to sex and sexuality, and this was a prime example. It was for Pups that I had my first kiss on screen in real life, in front of an entire crew. My character had her first period in one scene, something I hadn't even experienced in life yet. The movie blew up in Asia, and I became a sex symbol over there. I was 13.
Oh my god! Shit! Oh my god! Where's the My nipples are stinging! God, my ears are still ringing. Jesus! Oh my god! The cops are gonna be here any minute. We're so busted. Rocky, where's the bullet hole? The neighbors are gonna trip!
These experiences really traumatized Mischa, but it would take years for her to fully understand it. At the time of these projects, she was just a child who couldn't comprehend nor articulate the magnitude of what was going on and how it would later affect her. In her mind, all she wanted to do was act. And act, she did. Mischa continued to book several jobs upon these roles and was a working actress and model. Though her career was on the rise, her school life was not. Mischa was painfully shy and a loner, so as to not draw attention to herself and her extracurricular activities. She often kept her head down at school and tried to remain invisible. But after appearing in the movie The Sixth Sense, Mischa would have no choice but to face the unwanted attention.
It was just one of those snowball effects. And I've always enjoyed having adults treat me as peers from a young age. I was not somebody who really hung out with the other kids. I wasn't a cool kid and I didn't really fit in. So it was nice to I would just escape off into this world of theater and film. You know, I would be at school and nobody even knew I was an actor. So wow. I actually, for a long time, I really wrestled for a normalcy and a normal childhood, and I got it for a long time. So one day I remember The Sixth Sense came out, and then they started articles in like local papers in New York. It got more recognition. Yeah. But even that didn't break enough for people to really notice. It was definitely The Sixth Sense that was the one that ruined my life. No, I'm just joking. But that's when the other kids were like,
Upon appearing in The Sixth Sense, Mischa was constantly bullied at school and decided to transfer to a performing arts school so that she could be around kids like herself. According to Mischa, her father refused to pay for a private school and told her that if she wanted to attend, she would need to pay the tuition herself. Quote, "He had already paid a lot of money for my big sister's education, and he wasn't interested in Take Two. So he was like, well, if you want to do it, you pay for it. So with my earnings, I did."
You started acting at the age of 9, and it seems you haven't slowed down since. How difficult was it growing up and combining acting, which was obviously your passion, and getting an education?
For me, it was always important to me to have a normal life. And I'm the only person in my family who acts. I have 2 sisters, and no one in my parents or their family acts. So it was strange when I picked up on it and loved it so much. And I went to public school in New York the whole time I was doing those films when I was younger. And then eventually that became an impossibility because people started to recognize me, like around after The Sixth Sense. The kids all knew who I was, and then they were kind of scared of it. So I basically was given an ultimatum and decided I needed to go to a different kind of high school. So I tried homeschooling and didn't really like it, and then went into a professional arts school for high school and attended that while I did film, and I loved it.
In 2003, Mischa would make an appearance on the show Fastlane, where she would impress executive producer McG. At that time, McG was working on a new show called The OC and really wanted to cast Mischa for the lead role. In an interview with Cosmopolitan, Mischa said, "I had done a guest appearance on McG's other show, Fastlane. I met with him after and he was like, I want you to do my new show. He really pushed to make me Marissa." When Mischa auditioned for the part, the higher-ups weren't convinced that she was right for the role, but after several auditions, she would win them over.
Oh, so much about the audition process. I mean, that was kind of wild. It wasn't like a smooth sailing thing, because I remember when I first sat down in that office off of Sunset, it's like right where that Italian restaurant used to be. It's been gone forever. But and they had the office upstairs, and it was like, they were like, oh, the reason we want you for this is because you are kind of English and a New Yorker, and you're different. Because I was like, how, like, we were talking about the project, and I was like, oh, yeah, that was a funny one. And McGee was like, I think that's why you're going to work for this role. And he was like, but we're going to have to take you in and fight for it. And I went through multiple rounds at the studio. It was McGee who really championed it. And to the point where he finally went and got film and shot me himself, paid for it.
Oh, wow.
And that one was less nerve wracking because it was less like being in front of a panel of execs. It was more just me and him and a bare crew, maybe 3 other people, lighting and setting it up in this, I remember it as a garage, but it was probably some little studio thing he had. And, yeah, so that's when I was really able to do the crying and the emoting for it was easier for me to act if it was just not this insane testing thing.
Right.
And so when they saw that, that's how I got the role. But I wasn't really their first choice in terms of from those test readings.
Mm-hmm.
There were other people.
Right. But Josh really wanted for you and was fighting for you as well.
Mischa Barton would land the role as Marissa Cooper, a rich girl from Orange County who was a fashionista with lots of problems. When the OC premiered, it became a hit, turning Mischa into a teen idol. The OC frenzy was insane. From the outside looking in, Mischa appeared to be living the dream life. She was on a hit show, young, rich, and famous, but behind the scenes, things were not as they seemed. In her Harper's Bazaar article, Mischa details the pressure she felt playing Marissa Cooper and being a teenager in Hollywood. Here I was, playing a confident character who was fast and loose, and yet, I was still a virgin. The kids in the show were quintessential rich, privileged American kids, drinking, taking drugs, and of course, having sex. I knew it was important to get this thing, my virginity that was looming over me, the elephant in the room, if you will, out of the way. I started to really worry that I couldn't play this character if I didn't hurry up and mature a little. Did I ever feel pressure to have sex with someone? Well, after being pursued by older men in their 30s, I eventually did the deed. I feel a little guilty because I let it happen. I felt so much pressure to have sex, not just from him, but society in general. This was early on in those critical days, and when I finally met someone new and wanted to remove myself from the situation, it created a toxic and manipulative environment. I felt controlled within an inch of my life. At the same time, nobody was happy that there was so much media attention on me over the other cast members. It rocked the boat in a big way. They thought I was courting publicity because the person I was dating at the time was someone well known in LA circles. I wasn't attention seeking, but by that point, it had begun to snowball.
The tabloids love to follow, certainly your personal lives. Does that freak you out a little bit? Is that something that bothers you, or do you figure, hey, I got into this line of work, it's something I'm going to deal with?
Mischa? I don't know. I think it definitely comes with the job. It's not fun. I think all of us have experienced it to some extent, and it can be annoying after a while, but then it would be silly to get aggravated by it so early on. I mean, we're so lucky and we all love our jobs, and so.
I mean, it really is true that when you get into this line of work, you want attention. You want attention. Otherwise, you're not.
It's sort of you want to be recognized for your work. But
that's what I'm saying. You want eyes to watch you. You want ears to listen to what you're saying. You want people to pay attention to your work.
Right.
And part of what comes with that is this interesting dynamic where we spend an evening with you and we feel like we know you, which is your character, and then we're obsessed now to find out who you really are.
Mischa was everywhere. She was on the cover of every magazine. She was the face of several products and brands. She was the star of a hit TV show. She was that girl. Though the OC had achieved great success and catapulted Mischa into stardom, she would quickly find herself wanting out of the OC bubble. After 3 seasons in 2006, Mischa's character, Marissa Cooper, was killed off. According to Mischa, the climate on set was toxic, oppressive, and very demanding. In her mind, it was time to leave. Quote, "It felt right to leave the OC in 2006. I wanted to go and do films. There was so much other stuff going on behind the scenes, and I wasn't being treated great by a couple of people. It's complicated. It had become completely abusive. I had a couple of bad experiences behind the camera, and unfortunately, that sort of set the tone for the rest of my experience on the show. And it was just a bit much for me. They weren't appreciative of how hard I was working or what I was going through off camera either, so it didn't feel like I was supported. I'm very slow to feel comfortable talking about it. It's hard because I was young and I was very immature. There's people who are a lot older than you, and 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds can seem like adults, and I certainly was quite a sophisticated one, I guess. So maybe there was a misconception about how young I really was a lot of the time.
If anybody wanted the show or thought the show was going in the wrong direction, I would have been one of them. And then, like, you know, there were some people who thought that it was, you know, were very happy with it. And then, like, you know, Adam had a lot of film offers he couldn't take, and so did I. And it was just like, and our characters' writing was getting more and more difficult to act. And it was just like, you know, it was their professional decision to come to me and give me two versions of an ending. And I chose for the character to die. I mean, it wasn't really my choice in terms of the TV world. There's all kinds of politics that goes into TV, why they chose to take it off. But I think that it was a better decision. I was pleased with it in the end. I mean, it was a great 3 years of my life, but I do think that, like, it was time for things to change. And it was like an unhealthy work atmosphere.
In later years, Mischa's OC co-stars would dispute her claims after she publicly stated that she was bullied on set, and that everything changed when Rachel Bilson was brought on full-time. According to Rachel and others, they denied that any bullying happened on set and accused Mischa's mother of being a stage mom.
I can tell you about my experience with total honesty and transparency. I cannot speak for somebody else's experience. And we have touched on this, Rachel, that someone who's 16, 17, 18, that amount of hours of work, pressure, at such a young age, at best, you're exhausted. And at worst, it's overwhelming and chaotic. So it kind of breaks my heart a little to know that we knew there's a lot of pressure on her, but if it was really that bad of a experience, that's not right for any young person. But some of the comments were very perplexing to me. So I don't know what the truth is about that, but I do know that yes, this was an enormous amount of pressure for
the
her.
One thing,
and for everybody.
Yeah, the one thing that I can say is, like, in one of her first comments, she says that I was added last minute after the first season, which is actually completely false and not what happened. So it's starting out that way. I was like, well, that's misinformation. Where are we going with this? And what is she trying to say? Which I would actually like to talk to her and find out, you know, what her experience was from her perspective, because I saw things a little differently.
She had mentioned something about specifically men being mean to her on set. And I wondered, I felt like she was alluding to cast members.
I'm definitely pretty confused by most of it. And I don't know who she's referring to, because I didn't personally witness any of that. So I don't know who she's referring to or what, because I did not see it myself.
Upon Mischa's departure from the OC in 2006, she would face a lot of scrutiny and backlash in the media after she was dubbed a party girl. At that time, Mischa began hanging out with Nicole Richie, Cisco Adler, and friends, and completely immersed herself into the LA nightlife. Mischa, who was once coveted in the media, was now being harassed, stalked, and ripped apart in the press. To the paparazzi, all bets were off. In May of 2007, after a trip to Europe, where she was caught in a public drunken state, Mischa returned to LA and met up with close pal Nicole Richie, who was throwing a barbecue for Memorial Day. Nicole Richie sent her guest the following email invitation that was later leaked to bloggers. It read, "My fellow Americans, it's that time of year to celebrate our country by drinking massive amounts of beer. Let's stand together as one, live the American dream, take shots, pass out, and wake up with our pants ripped open at the seams. Let's glorify this day in your sluttiest tops and tightest pair of Subi jeans, even though we have no effing clue what Memorial Day really means. There will be a scale at the front door. No girls over 100 pounds allowed in. Start starving yourself now. See you all then. Nicole Richie's daytime barbecue would quickly take a dark turn when Mischa allegedly OD'd. A partygoer, Sophie Monk, would later do an interview discussing the situation, though she never identified Mischa.
And I was walking through the party and they said, meet this celebrity. And she was like, oh, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with her? And I was so super, sober. And so there's like 200 people at this party. And all of a sudden I was like, she's had too much of something. And she starts convulsing like crazy. And all her best friends, everyone left the party. I mean, everyone within 5 minutes left that party thinking they're going to get in trouble. And I didn't know her. And I was like, they stripped her off naked, ran a shower, left her in it, and left her in the bathroom naked. And everyone left. And I said, I'm not leaving.
All
her
best friends.
And I didn't know her, and I just said, I am not leaving. I found a dressing gown in a closet, covered her, called the ambulance, and she was like foam coming out of her mouth. They had to strap her down. She would have died easy.
Mischa's alleged OD swept the tabloids, gossip sites, and blogs. The website Pop Culture Died in 2009 wrote, shortly after nightfall, Perez Hilton posted a not-so-blind item about a mystery actress who created a drug-fueled fuss at the afternoon get-together. Not long after Hilton's blog post, TMZ named names. The website reported that the former TV starlet was rushed to the ER due to an adverse reaction to medication she'd been taking for bronchitis. The site went on to claim that Mischa had too many cocktails, and the drugs in her system reacted accordingly. The tabloids claimed that a source at the party said she was rolling around on the ground, and then suddenly she began screaming that she was dying. The magazine went on to allege that Mischa arrived at Sherman Oaks Hospital disheveled, drenched in vomit, and barely clothed. 2007 would be a difficult year for Mischa. In addition to the alleged OD, Mischa would be arrested in December for driving under the influence, possession of marijuana, and driving without a license. In an interview with Nylon magazine, Mischa said, "That was a low point for me. I never ever would have thought I would be arrested. I was disappointed because it associated me with a group of girls that I would rather not be associated with. That was the biggest bummer. I didn't leave my house. I was too embarrassed. They made such a big deal out of it with these other young actresses that for a little bit, I wanted to crawl into a hole and die."
Mischa has had her problems, but one of the most publicised is her drink driving conviction. Mischa was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence, possession of marijuana, and driving without a valid licence in December 2007. Mischa was convicted for drink driving, but the drugs charges were dropped.
I think we've covered so many different subjects, like myth-wise, on this show that you have really kind of opened up to and talked about. Like, we've talked about the press speculation the whole time, you know, life after the OC, people speculating about your weight in the press. I suppose one other is your DUI. Like, what would people have, like, misconceptions about that situation?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even like to talk about it, to be honest. I mean, the thing with that was, it was just like, I was young, and it was a sort of unfortunate situation, like an unfair situation, you know. I was like very little over the limit. I wasn't really driving drunk, but I didn't have a license and I had no right to be doing it, and so that's that, you know.
Yeah, you commented on, obviously, Wine and Seacrest show saying that, you know, you obviously took responsibility for your actions, etc.
Yeah, of course, because I think that's what you should do if you're a young actress under the public eye, because it was really an unfortunate turn of events where a lot of other young people were getting noticed for their misbehavior driving and drinking and just being reckless in Los Angeles. And I didn't have a license coming out from London and New York. I just, it was silly of me. It was like one of those things, it's like a country kid who just drives a car, and I was like a couple beers over the limit maybe, and it was just, you know.
Is it kind of quite a learning curve having to go through something like that in the public eye?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, you know, it was traumatizing in many ways. You know, my parents were furious and they came to pick me up the next morning, and I think more than anything, embarrassing and silly, and it's just like, well, I try to forget about it. It's like it's growing up, isn't it?
What do you think about, you know, you kind of get lumped with other celebrities who have been through troubles in their past, like Lindsay Lohan or Britney.
Well, I just think obviously, I think it's silly because everybody is different. And, you know, when you say names like that, it just sounds like people I grew up hearing about. You know, it's not, I don't look at my life that way, you know.
When Mischa left the OC in 2006, she moved back to England, where her family was originally from, and tried to find herself. By the time Mischa returned to LA in 2007, she was caught up in drugs, booze, and toxic relationships. Her career was no longer the focal point. Her personal life was, and the paparazzi would be there to capture her worst moments. By 2008, Mischa's life became media fodder. Quote, "The press started coming for me. There was no relief from it, so I fought for a long time to be unfamous. But the more I shied away, the more frenzied the paparazzi became. It became too much to read about myself every day and to have these publications laugh at my pain. I didn't want to leave my house. They chased my car. They tried to climb over the walls at my house. They tracked my phone and my car. They'd make deals with restaurants so that when I went to one, someone would notify them. They'd buy cell phones for the homeless, instructing them to call as soon as they saw me walking down the street. I was stalked."
Do they just sort of wait until someone might turn up?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of money in it, I suppose. Like, I just find it kind of creepy as a young girl. Like, you know, something about men sitting outside your house in cars and following you everywhere you go and checking what you're doing and, you know, and they, you know, I don't know.
Do they ever try and provoke you and, like, say things to you to get a reaction out of you?
Yeah, sometimes. The mean ones do. There are now these people who run around with video cameras, too. And they're the worst, because they're always, like, trying to get a comment on something, and half the time I don't even know what they're talking about, and I hear it from them first.
Do you think if you, like, when you were younger, when you were starting out, kind of doing theatre and doing movies, if you knew that you had to kind of put up with this side of it, you would still do it?
I love acting so much, but, like, yeah, I mean, I just never thought, I mean, who would have thought? Like, you know, you never think you're going to be, like, you know, famous and get your picture taken all the time. That's the worst, is when they're in the car, because you never know that they've been shooting you.
They just kind of pop their camera up and...
Well, no, sometimes I just never see them, and, like, they take all these photos and you don't see them until they're out in the magazine, and then you're like, oh my God.
You just have no idea?
Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
Well, you said when I first met you that it happened to you and your new boyfriend, and you just had no idea they were even there.
Yeah, that creeped him out.
On top of the paparazzi invading Mischa's privacy, they would also heavily scrutinize her body and weight. Headlines would read that Mischa was anorexic and struggling to put on weight. The following week, headlines would read that she was too fat. The constant tabloids about her appearance took a huge toll on Mischa. Quote, "It was stupid, because you couldn't do right or wrong. It was like, you're either too thin and then you put on 5 pounds. Oh, she's too fat. She's got to lose weight. At a certain point, I think that's when you just shut off. You just learn to disconnect from it."
You think she's a hot girl, right? She needs to take part in our little race and start running. And we'll show you why right now.
See, I don't know if you can see it clearly enough there, but I think you can. The cellulite on the back of her legs is out of control. Now, I don't want to be a bitch, right? But I have to confess, normally I stick up for these girls, celebrities, and people say, oh, they look bad. No, they look great. I tell you though, that cellulite is doing some serious damage to the back of her thigh.
It's terrible. And part of the reason why they think it's so bad with her is because she's a really bad chain smoker.
You know what though? That's the one part that I'll say, all right, good, then maybe it'll help others to stop smoking.
Mm-hmm.
See, I mean, she's young.
She's very young.
And she's hot otherwise. To have that kind of cellulite, she's only 22. That's out, that shouldn't happen. I don't know how the smoking's related. I mean, I found that really surprising. But if that's true,
mm-hmm.
I mean, if that isn't an incentive to stop smoking, I don't know what is. Because if it's going to give you that kind of cellulite, that'll freak girls out, man.
Right. I'm going to do a what would Jank do question.
Interesting.
So you have an opportunity to hit it.
Done.
Hit it and quit it?
Done. What? Huh?
Really?
Oh, of course. What are you talking about? Okay.
That doesn't, turn you off?
Of course that turns me off, but I'm not going to look at the inside of the back of her thighs, okay?
Yeah, you are.
Well, at some point. But Mischa Barton is sexy. Look, assuming I'm single, which of course all these questions assume. Dave, we got to pull up another picture, man, because we're not. Mischa Barton's a really cute girl. She's 22 years old. I knocked that cigarette out of her mouth and go to work.
Dude, but if she's that bad now, imagine 10 years from now what her legs are going to look like.
I know, but I'm not going to her 10 years from now.
I know, but on another note, they're going to be really bad. And I also wonder, is there cosmetic surgery to help that?
In 2009, Mischa would distance herself from the LA party scene and focus on her career. She starred in a few movies, had a new TV show coming out, and tried to put the negativity behind her. In order to keep her focused and on task, Mischa says that her team began pumping her with various medications. These medications would put Mischa's life into a downward spiral that sent her to the hospital under a 5150 in July. She told The Guardian the following: "When I had that breakdown, it was around a show that I was trying to get going, and I was forced into a bunch of different situations that I didn't want to be in. And so things snowballed and really took on a life of their own. And then the next thing you know, you've hit a wall. Things can happen terribly fast, overnight, if you're under that much stress."
Ultimately, what really happened was they wanted me to be able to continue working and to go on to a next show. I knew that it was very tough. They wanted me to go get better. They wanted to give me a bunch of prescription pills. So super young, had not taken any of those kinds of medicines. Wasn't really meant for me. It resulted in my agents and my parents and everybody thinking that I wasn't capable of going off and doing this job in a few days' time, that I wasn't ready. And I hated that. I hated not being capable for my job, and I hated people telling me that I couldn't do it as well. There was an experience where they wanted to go send me to the hospital, and it resulted in a fight between the team around me at the time and my family. And so they sent me to the hospital, and these pills that I had been prescribed by a doctor that they had brought in to make sure that I was ready for work. And then I go down to the hospital, and I managed to get out of the hospital doors and make a run for it. And that didn't end so well for me. And again, I was not suicidal at that time. It was just, I didn't want to be there, and I didn't think it was fair.
You said there were medications that weren't right for you.
Mm-hmm.
Were there people medicating you to keep you working?
Yes. I mean, yes. Everybody was very concerned that I wasn't ready to jump back into a whole new show. And there was a lot of pressure to do right by the show and to helm a new series. And again, I hate to disappoint. It is my least favorite thing, and I was very young. And going out of the OC into another show was very stressful for me. And I don't know if there's any one particular person to blame. It's you can, again, hindsight is 20/20, but an entire team of people felt that they knew best for me at that time.
But who was your fiduciary in this? Who was putting your interest above the project or their
Nobody really, to be honest. I had only a few people who were really looking out for me, but unfortunately came in too late.
So were they medicating you to keep your energy up?
Just to keep me going, and yeah.
But speed.
Well, no, not necessarily just that. Also things like Xanax and things that take away the anxiety of work and the public eye. And I was getting pretty stressed out. Again, I had something 8 days off that year. So in general, they were just prescribing things they probably had no right to be prescribing. And then not watching me while they did it, not making sure that I was doing it right. And I'm 23 years old, I think it was. So it's not really appropriate to just hand over a prescription like that and not watch the person. And I did go away to a place that we thought would be a great place to go away. And then I came home to a group of people, and it ended badly.
But that's treating you like a commodity.
Yeah, there is a lot of that.
That pisses me off. They got a smorgasbord of pills here.
Mm-hmm.
She's anxious, so let's give her this. She's down, let's give her this. Just keep her working, keep her up there, keep her cranking.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying, hey, stop. She's had 8 days off in a year, and it should be 80. And nobody's saying that. And then you get criticized and 5150'd.
At just 23 years old, Mischa had experienced so much trauma. She went from being a Hollywood starlet with the world in the palm of her hand to being hunted by the paparazzi and later dealing with addiction and mental health issues. After completing a 2-week stay in the hospital under the 5150, Mischa says that she was so broken down. She had no privacy, no autonomy, and felt extremely alone. Quote, "My mental health declined. The constant feeling of being hunted affected me entirely. I had a few breakdowns. but no one questioned why I was having these breakdowns. I became a target of nasty attacks when I was clearly expressing signs of needing help. Just because the pain is invisible, it doesn't mean it isn't there. It becomes a sport, an addiction even, to the people hunting you. There is a line that you have to toe with the paparazzi. You don't want to make enemies out of them. What happened to me gave me PTSD. In the years afterwards, cameras would bother me. Any noises that sounded like a shutter would give me a panic attack and make me extremely paranoid. I'd have full-blown panic attacks. I went to very dark places. I've always been characterized by the people and friends around me as strong, something I detest just as much as I'm proud to say that I am certainly a survivor. To be strong is important, but it's equally important to allow young girls to hang on to their fragility. When you start to take that away, it's a slippery slope. Mental health is something that is so closely tied to your self-worth.
You became the paparazzi darling.
I think that I was just overwhelmed by the glamour of it.
How did that shape you? What was the pressure like?
The pressure is immense. I certainly, hear certain noises and flashes, and I always consider it's, probably a paparazzi. I have, a little bit of, constant fear about that stuff, and you would think I'm cautious enough by now to not have these latest things happen to me because I am pretty private and cautious, but I suppose nothing is ever perfect, and sometimes, I don't know.
Do you want to know why you're not seeing those things coming and not savvy about that?
Yes.
I tell you why. You had all that exposure. You've seen all that paparazzi. You think, I would be savvy enough to see that. You don't see it because you don't have the larcenous, evil concepts in your mind. You don't go where they go. And if you don't have those constructs in your mind, you don't see people doing that. And that's how we get victimized. If you don't have the ability to go to that dark place and look at it the other way back, it's hard to foresee it.
In the years that followed, Mischa would have financial issues as her career hit a standstill. It was hard for her to find work that would leave a dent in her career and make a lasting impression now that she had been branded a loose cannon. In August of 2014, Mischa fell behind on her mortgage, owed thousands of dollars in credit card debt, was sued by producers, and hit an all-time low. But things escalated when she sued her mother in April of 2015. It's important to note that Mischa's mother served as her manager for much of her career. The Associated Press wrote, "The lawsuit accuses Nuala of bullying her daughter and states she had been fired from her management role. The lawsuit also accuses Nuala of kicking her daughter out of a multi-million-dollar Beverly Hills home that was purchased with money earned while Mischa was a child actress. In addition, the lawsuit claims that her mother is withholding royalties and lied about the amount the actress was paid for a 2013 film so she could pocket the difference, in addition to her 10% management fee."
This morning, actress Mischa Barton locked in a bitter battle with her mother, taking her to court claiming she stole from the OC star and made endorsement deals that damaged her reputation. Barton suing her mother Nuala, who started acting as the star's manager when she was just 8 years old, for among other things, fraudulent misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty. The lawsuit calling Nuala a greedy stage mother who schemed to defraud her unsuspecting victim to exploit her daughter's career for her own selfish benefit.
After school, it's a date.
The lawsuit also alleging Nuala withheld compensation from Barton, even lying about the salary Barton was getting from the horror movie The Hoarder so that she could pocket the difference. The lawsuit also claiming Nuala exploited Barton's fame to profit from side businesses Barton claims she wasn't compensated for.
We brought this action on behalf of our client Mischa Barton against her mother and former talent manager Nuala Barton, so that Mischa can get closure, can move on with her career, and can get to the bottom of what's happened to all the money that she's made.
After skyrocketing to fame, Barton, now 29, went through a rough patch. Arrested in 2007, pleading no contest to driving under the influence.
She was one very hot rising starlet and someone who lost a big opportunity.
Barton is seeking unspecified damages from her mother, Nuala. Telling ABC News overnight, Mrs. Barton is extremely troubled by such outrageous and patently false claims of dishonest or improper conduct against Mischa Barton.
After months of much back and forth, Mischa would request that the case be dismissed. On February 8, 2016, the case was dismissed without prejudice. A year later, in March of 2017, Mischa would be in the headlines again when a video of her in her backyard hit the press.
I don't want to know. Oh my God.
She's yelling incoherently and cursing in this exclusive footage obtained by TMZ.
Oh, my mother. I always knew it. Oh, you witch. I knew it.
The video, apparently shot outside her home in West Hollywood, ends with Mischa taking a nasty tumble.
Oh, my. I was right. I was right. I was right. Guys, you just died. We're dying. We're dying. I knew it. I knew it. And I didn't want it. I didn't want to know. Oh my God. It's terrifying. Whoa. You're angry. Oh, I feel you. Oh, I'll be your conduit. Yeah. 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 Yeah, Ziggy Stardust, you fucking, I always knew it. I always fucking knew it.
This video swept news media outlets and further painted Mischa as a has-been actress who lost her career, her money, and now her mind. But there was more to the story. In an interview with Dr. Phil, Mischa would detail the cause of her behavior in that video by telling him that during a night out on the town celebrating her 31st birthday, she was drugged.
It was really sad. The night of my birthday, I went to dinner with 4 friends to my favorite restaurant. And then the next night, I thought we would go out and have some drinks at a bar and everybody could just come by and say hi. And the next thing you know, I started acting strange and my friends were like, this is completely out of your character. It's time to go home. And I didn't feel well. And then a lot of the rest is blackout. And then my neighbor started taping me. And instead of trying to help me, the first thing they thought there, again, was to take a video and to document it. So again, that was another huge blow to me. And I had to move immediately. Of course, I had to change my whole environment and remove myself from that situation. So I have to say, it's been one thing after the other.
But you think you were drugged?
Yes, I do. The paramedic said that I showed all the symptoms of GHB and that I was drugged.
You woke up in the hospital, right? Because you blacked out.
Right.
And you got 2-seaters?
I did, yeah. They took care of me there. They took me 2-seaters. I was already out.
And you had no idea what happened to you?
No.
You didn't know how you got there?
Nope.
Has any of it come back to you?
Nope.
You said something hurtful about your mother in that tape.
Oh, my mother. I always knew it.
How did you feel when you saw that?
I felt really awful. That probably is the worst part of it for me.
Have you talked to her about it?
It's been, quite some time since we've properly spoken.
Has she seen the tape, you suppose?
Yes, I would say so.
Have y'all talked about it at all, the tape?
It's been extremely brief.
Was it an apology or?
It was a bit of both, but also there's just not much communication at this very moment.
For over a decade, Mischa's life and every moment of it had been documented and detailed in the press, tabloids, and media. For years, she felt exploited and taken advantage of by strangers and people she knew. But the worst was yet to come. A few months after being drugged, Mischa would suffer the biggest betrayal of all when she was alerted that an ex-boyfriend secretly recorded their intimate moments. In 2017, my body became a marketable commodity once again. I took my ex-partner to court for selling a sex tape of me that he had recorded without my consent while we were together. The videos were then offered to the highest bidder online. My mind had boggled when I heard he had said, I knew that she was one of the only girls, unlike Paris Hilton or Kim Kardashian, who didn't have a sex tape.
It was an emotional moment for actress Mischa Barton as she reveals she is a victim of revenge porn. The actress claims an ex-boyfriend she was in love with is now trying to sell a sex tape that was made without her knowledge. Now Mischa is fighting to stop its release.
I've been put through an incredibly hard and trying time.
Mischa Barton tells the world she's a victim of revenge porn by an ex-boyfriend.
This is a painful situation, and my absolute worst fear was realized when I learned that someone I thought I loved and trusted was filming my most intimate and private moments without my consent with hidden cameras.
Mischa read a prepared statement about the horrific ordeal during a press conference in LA.
And then I learned something even worse, that someone is trying to sell these videos and make them public.
Attorney Lisa Bloom is representing Mischa.
We consider this to be a form of domestic abuse.
Mischa has now obtained a court order to stop the sale of the video.
If you continue, we will find you, come after you, and bring you to justice to the fullest extent possible. You have been warned. You proceed at your peril.
The two men involved in this matter were Mischa's ex-boyfriends, John Zacharias and Adam Shaw. In court papers, Mischa stated that Zacharias recorded them having intercourse and also took nude photos of her without her knowledge. She alleged that he tried to sell the tapes for $500,000. In a sworn statement, Mischa claimed that after she broke up with Zacharias, she began dating Shaw. She said Shaw appeared to want to help her delete the photos from Zacharias' computer, but he later also tried to take advantage of her and forged her signature on some checks. Months before the Me Too movement erupted, Mischa would stand up for herself and fight for her rights. She pressed charges and took her two ex-boyfriends involved in this matter to court. After a very distressing couple of months, Mischa won the lawsuit and was able to block the release of this tape, the explicit photos, and was granted 2 permanent restraining orders. In an interview with The Guardian, Mischa said, "It was right before anybody felt sorry for you in the slightest, but I am extremely proud to say that we won that case. It took a lot, and that's all that really matters. It was a very desperate, dark moment. I really thought that what he'd done was going to get released, and that the rest of my life was over."
How did you find out that he had sexually explicit materials he had recorded without your knowledge?
Well, I didn't know forever until one of his friends came to me and said, "You should be careful about him."
Oh.
And I'd already started to sense around this time that there was a problem. And then he started bragging about it to the wrong people who came to me. But then there was still no specific proof, and you would just hope that it would disappear.
And then when did that penny drop where you were like, oh my God?
Finally, it broke in the press.
Were you ever afraid to stand up for yourself?
I mean, of course you're afraid to stand up for yourself. I definitely was. And don't forget, this was before Me Too and Time's Up, and so it was extremely taboo. I had no idea what revenge was. That was completely foreign to me.
Upon Mischa's victory, she packed up her things and relocated to New York City to get away from LA. So much had happened in that toxic town that she was ready to wipe the slate clean and start over. But after a few years of being out of the spotlight, Mischa was ready to make a comeback. She would return to the screen, but this time, not playing a character, but as herself in the reality show The Hills New Beginnings. Mischa's decision to join the show was, in her words, a wild one, but she wanted to put herself out there and try something new. Mischa's return to LA would put her in the lines of fire with one of her harshest critics, Perez Hilton. Perez, the celebrity blogger, had always talked about Mischa in a very degrading way. Perez talked about Mischa's appearance, body, and even nicknamed her cottage cheese. Back in the early 2000s, Perez was relentless when it came to Mischa and other young female celebrities. For context, here's an example of a blog post that Perez made about Mischa on his site. Quote, "Ew, Mushy Barton was spotted in Hollywood on Tuesday night puffing away on a cancer stick. So not attractive, mush mush. You may have gotten rid of the cottage cheese, but you've still got the kinkles. And smoking really damages your skin."
As for the Perez thing, he really bullied me both in person and on the internet for a long time, through social circles here in LA as well. So he would pick a couple very famous targets, and that was just that was that. Whatever, I don't even think he's that interesting or talking about at all. He's irrelevant now. But I think, at the time, yes, it was hard because there was really no way to talk back. 'Cause, like, I was sort of just at the mercy of him being able to do that.
Did it feel like there was an unbelievable scrutiny, like to be inside of it?
It still affects me. I totally don't like when people run too fast or like cameras go off, because you don't forget, you know, like if you've been in any car accidents or anything like that caused by that kind of stuff, and like, you know, you've had bad enough experiences.
While filming a scene for The Hills, Mischa would run into Perez Hilton, where she confronted him about all of the negative things he said about her in the years prior. Seemingly apologetic, Perez attempted to make amends with Mischa. Mischa, however, wasn't having it. After Mischa and Perez's interaction on The Hills, Perez would hit the press and do interviews, where he spoke about the scene that has since gone viral.
There was close to 15 minutes before that of me apologizing some more, hearing her out, letting her speak. And then, of course, the moment that ends on TV is afterwards. So when I was done with my apology and hearing her, I said, listen, you know, human to human, on a real level, all this aside, I don't care about the cameras. I just want you to know I truly am deeply very sorry. Like, I wanted to emphasize that even more. And then, you know, things just exploded a little bit. And I acknowledge I probably didn't handle it as best as I could have in that moment. But also what you did not see is at the beginning of the show, you saw that Mischa, was a guest on Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag's podcast. Well, I know Spencer and Heidi very well. We're friends. I'm the godfather of their son, Gunnar. After that appearance, Spencer texted me and said, whoa, Mischa had all of these things to say about you. And that caught me off guard, and I felt truly awful. So I said, Spencer, I'm going to make a video, and I want you to send it to her, please. A private video. I didn't apologize publicly. It was a very personal, sincere, private apology. She received that. And I didn't want to do anything public back then because I didn't want people to think, or her, that I wasn't being genuine, that I was doing it for any ulterior motives. So, you know, I apologized then. I apologized again in person. And I don't have to, she doesn't have to accept my apology. And that's okay.
In the 2000s, I remember reading your site. It was really powerful, but at the same time, there was content on there that denigrated women and was troublesome in the way that you talked about women's bodies. Do you ever consider how your content perpetuated some of the issues that the Me Too movement is working on to address in Hollywood?
I didn't consider that back then because the Me Too movement wasn't around, but I definitely am very mindful of how I do things now. Absolutely.
Mischa appeared on the reboot of The Hills for one season, but was allegedly not asked back for season 2, with the rumor being that she was, quote, too boring. So, what is Mischa Barton up to now? Well, after The Hills, Mischa appeared in 2 movies and recently announced that she would be joining the cast of Neighbours, which is an Australian soap opera. Mischa is set to play American character Reese and is very excited about this new journey. Mischa went through a lot in the media at such a young age. Her darkest and most vulnerable moments were displayed for all to see. Every click, every snapshot documented her pain. In closing out her Harper's Bazaar article, Mischa writes, "From the teenage girl who did a lot of her sexual first in front of the world, her first kiss, her first period, her first sexual experience, I have finally learned what it means to be in control of my own sexuality. I have grown to love watching women break through these taboos. The more we talk about what we've done to generations past, whether it be Britney Spears, who was so poorly treated by the press, or Natalie Portman talking about how she felt sexualized as a child, the sooner we can protect our young women and learn from our mistakes as a society. I realize that these are very complicated conversations to have, with repercussions for many people, but I can't sit back and let people tear me down anymore. I'm not just a headline. I'm a woman, a human being, and I have a story to tell. I can't stay quiet anymore because these things are still happening. The exploitation of young girls, to people of color, to all women, sexualized while being picked apart and shamed for being alive in their own bodies. If my story can help one young girl stand up for herself and not let the world tear them down, then all of this will be worth it. I've had every opportunity to walk away from the industry and come back to it. I think karma is a real thing, and it all comes back around. Do I think the unfair treatment of young women is not a cool thing? Yes, but I'm not resentful. We need to heal collectively as a society, and I now know that starts from within.
I think it's great that more celebrities and actors and just anybody really is able to say, like, I suffer from anxiety or I suffer from depression, and not have this like incredible stigma hanging over them anymore. But depression and anxiety, they actually really matter to me, and like they're things that are close to my heart. So I was like really hopeful that if people heard the other side of the story, they might kind of get it, especially young girls and the kind of audience that watches The Hills, that they might kind of see a bigger, rounder picture of what you really go through in Hollywood and in this business.